Hello, and welcome to Sideways. This week, we're talking about why confronting a loved one about their drink, drug, or indeed any other addiction-related problem can be fraught with difficulty and risk, and what you can do to give your attempt to address the situation the best chance of success. And it's worth saying at this point, this must be an important topic because inadvertently, it's the second time we've covered it in about 7 months. We also discuss the best way to catch a kangaroo, marvel at the joy of video calls, feel grateful for reliable cars on long journeys, muse on the origin of surnames, and try to remember the lineup of the Travelling Willburys. For the second time, interventions.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, this is a little bit strange recording this on a Tuesday afternoon, isn't it, rather than a Sunday?
Yeah, we should be at work, really.
We should be, yeah. Well, luckily I've had today off anyway, so it worked in well.
Have you? Was that to do some Christmas shopping? I know how much you like the festive season.
Do you know what? I think I've done most of my Christmas shopping now.
Have you?
Yeah.
Did you have to get a sugar mouse?
No, I didn't actually. That was a long ago request. Yeah, when I was back in the days when I was married. Yes.
Yeah, you always used to have it on your list, didn't you? Did you ever find one? Because I did. I would never even know where to start looking for a sugar mouse.
No, you have to go to specialist sweet shops these days, don't you? Like the one
specialist sugar mouse shops.
Well, then don't just do sugar mice. That'd be a bit of a limited amount of what I'm trying to look for. Yeah, but the goods on their shelves. Yeah, limited range. That's the phrase. Yeah.
Of course, you're no stranger to specialist shops, are you?
In what way, mate? What are you trying to say?
Oh, I'm just going to leave that hanging there.
Okay, best glossed over. Anyway, well, I know we're a little bit tight for time. So,
and of course, I'm very tight for editing time, seeing as we're recording this on it's Wednesday, isn't it?
Oh, it's Wednesday. Did I say Tuesday? Yeah, I did say Tuesday. No, it's Wednesday. You're right.
It's a Wednesday afternoon, and I've got this episode's got to go out tomorrow. So, advance apologies to anyone who thinks it's a bit shoddy this week, because it's probably, if it is, it's because I ran out of time to edit it.
Or shoddier than normal, perhaps.
Exactly, which is hard to imagine.
Anyway, what I wanted to the subject matter for this week is interventions.
Okay.
Now, it's been on the list for a long while. Do you remember we put a whole long list together, and this has been sitting around for ages, but I was reminded of it as a subject this week.
Right.
When they were talking about it on a Radio 4 program that I was listening to.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lady on there who's an addiction specialist. And I've always had a bit of a jaundiced view towards interventions with drug and alcohol issues, purely based on my experience with them in the recovery community.
Right.
But there wasn't any definitive answers that this lady was giving on Radio 4. But doing my research, the stats seem to vary wildly on the success of interventions, anything between 30 and 80%. So it depends on where you get your stats from, I suppose. Perhaps my view towards them was because I was taking perhaps a too small a sample base.
There must be. There must be so many contributing factors that influence whether or not an intervention can be successful.
I think it also boils down to what does success look like. Because that's quite different.
You think you're back in the corporate world saying something like that?
Virtually, I do. Yeah. Well, I remember having a chat with, it was the CEO of one of the local rehab centres, and she was saying that their success rate was really high, up in the 90s. And I said, wow, that's really good. And I said, what do you base that on? And she said, completing the 3-month or 6-month rehab course. That is success. As long as they don't walk out, that's okay. They complete the course. They've successfully done their part of the bargain. So it's whether they go straight out of their lapse is of no relevance to them effectively, because it's they've done their job.
Yeah, I suppose if you're running a rehab facility, then I suppose that's a reasonable measure of success, isn't it? To say, well, if people stay on the course and they keep attending for 3 months, then that is success. I think that's perfectly legitimate. If you're saying, on the other hand, this person is now successfully an abstained drinker and will be for the foreseeable future, then obviously they don't have any control over that. So that would be a bit of an overreach, wouldn't it?
It would really, but I think you struggled not to use the word recovered there, didn't you? Because I think in the recovery community, we always see it as an ongoing process. I mean, in fact, we were talking about it in a meeting recently, and I was saying, would I count myself as being successful in my recovery, or do I have to wait to, if I'm sober, on my deathbed, I've done okay then?
You've recovered so far, aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah.
but I mean, I know you and I have spoken about this before. The notion of is it a help or a hindrance to consider yourself a lifetime addict?
Yes.
Right? We talked about that. But surely, when you think about being in recovery, it's like so many other aspects of life. We can only consider ourselves in the context of how much of our lives we've led, can't we? It's it would be the same in any other behavioural change. You can affect any behavioural change, but you can't say I'm a non-smoker for life, because you haven't finished your life, so you don't know what's going to happen. It would be ridiculous to try and pretend otherwise.
Absolutely, no, you're right, and which is why it's quite difficult to put a figure on interventions and whether they work or not, because how do you measure their success? But before we start, and we've gone on a bit further than I anticipated here, but before we start,
right, even though we have started, we have really, but there's just a headline that caught my eye, and I just wanted to share that with you.
This is from a Canadian newspaper, and the headline was "Fugitive Kangaroo, which spent 4 days on the run, punches police officer in the face." Now, again, it's one of those things that it did make me laugh, and I had to read on just to get the context of it all. But you've got to admit, that's a great headline, isn't it? But yeah, apparently this kangaroo in Canada, which obviously they're not indigenous to there, but perhaps that's why he was angry. I think he was very angry. Well, he's been transported between two zoo facilities. So, and I don't know how anyone would escape, or any animal would escape whilst they've been transported. But apparently, and it went on the run for 4 days. And they had to bring the police. I wonder why they used the police. Were they trained to catch kangaroos? Not really, are they? I don't know. I mean, perhaps that's part of basic training in Canada. We're doing kangaroo training this week, lads. Yeah, exactly. Surely he wasn't on the run, was he, the kangaroo? He was on the hop, surely. He was on the way. Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. But for 4 days, it's quite a long time to go missing, isn't it, really? I wonder what he was doing. Do you think he was sort of camping out in the forest? Hopping about. And then wait for the police to come. Well, bosh, I jobbed him. That was on his charge sheet. Can't go around assaulting police officers, can you? Well, I mean, you say it seems odd that they should call the police to catch you. Well, who would you, if you had an escaped kangaroo? The vets, who would you? The vets? Veterinary people. It must be. Oh, yeah, I'm sure the vets are going to say, yeah, we'll come and catch your kangaroo for you. Well, I'm sure they probably have interventionists in the animal world, so they can go out and help people. What, kangaroo behaviourist? Yeah. That's a niche, isn't it? It's quite. I reckon if you Googled kangaroo behaviourist, I bet there wouldn't be a massive range of options coming up, especially in Canada. Perhaps you and I should train up to do that then. We'd be busy, wouldn't we? We'd corner the market, wouldn't we? We would. In fact, we wouldn't have to do it. We wouldn't actually have to do it. All we'd have to do would be to train up and then write a guide to catching your escaped kangaroo, and we'd probably make millions, wouldn't we, of people who'd lost their kangaroos. There's an acorn of an idea there. We'll explore that. Yeah. Not a great one, anyway. Should we get? So what happened? So did anything come out of the report that was worth reporting? Not really. No, they caught the kangaroo after he jobbed the policeman and put him back and got him to the new zoo successfully, and he was happy. So he didn't have to serve any time for striking an officer of the law? No, you and I would have to, wouldn't we? There's one rule for us and one rule for escaped kangaroos, apparently. It's a disgrace. Yeah, this world of equality. Yeah. Anyway, what does an intervention look like? I don't know. You tell me. Well, I'm going to tell you, this is what my research was telling me. And I know from experience, because they used to have an officer down to the local recovery hub that used to go out. Now, he's not about anymore, so I don't know whether they still offer it or... Maybe he got punched by a kangaroo. Yeah, but he went back on the drink after that. That's for sure. Yeah, couldn't face the reality of it. But often, and I know it's in the past, it's been sort of like groups of friends or relatives have set up a sort of a meeting with the person to talk to them about the problems that are arising from their addiction, with a view to getting them to seek the help they need. And I know the local recovery hub used to have this officer. So he was a trained medical professional, effectively, to go and oversee these interventions, because I can imagine they get a bit. Well, they do. I know they get a bit sparky, especially if the intervention is set up and it's a surprise to the addict. They feel cornered. They can end up running away if they don't like what's happening. So it's got to be handled really sensitively. And the addicts that I've spoken to that have experienced it really don't like them. It's a very tough experience. I was going to say negative experience, but there has been positives out of it. But it's a very uncomfortable one.
So I'm just trying to think about what the benefits of an intervention might be. Presumably the only one that kind of springs to mind is that all that has hitherto been unsaid, presumably then is said. There is a clarity on both sides about, how the person with the dependence understands how their friends or relatives or whatever feel.
Yep, that's it.
So that clarity, one would argue, is useful. At least we know where we stand. But further than that, it's quite tricky to see what could be considered as consistently helpful.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, if it does prove that it then motivates the addict to go and get help, then that's going to be good. That's a good positive outcome. But you're right; it's the clarity and to have a structure to.
Have you seen that happen?
Well, no, not very often. I have had people that have had interventions that have eventually come in to recovery. Yes, but which is what I said at the top of this, that I've never really been a great fan of them, but reading up on it, there has been some success rates. And
maybe it sows a seed, but I'm yet to be dissuaded from the view that anybody changes before they're ready.
Well, I was going to come on to that because it is tricky. You can imagine, especially if you're dealing with an addict who's still in the madness, or they would find it difficult to assimilate what's going on anyway. I know when people talk to me about it, it's very fuzzy. I don't remember a lot of the stuff that was going on around me when I first went into recovery. Yeah. It's very tough. But I want to look at the primary risk that's attached to this as well. Because it seems quite difficult to find the positives from it. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go on to what the primary risk is here and how to make the intervention more effective. So perhaps we'll answer some of those questions here. Because often, the way we found it also, it's a sort of a last-ditch attempt often. It's not taken at the start of when a problem is starting to arise, because I think it's difficult to pinpoint, but it tends to crop up when people have had enough, or someone who constantly refused treatment or constantly relapsed and has tried to give up and hasn't had any success on their own. So
there's a distinction right away, isn't there? Which is what is the motivation for the intervention? Is it that I am fed up with your behaviour, or is it that I am concerned for you and I want to communicate that? Because
I'd imagine both on that.
Right, because it feels as if the more it's about my concern for you, the more likely it is to land.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the less aggressively I'm going to tell you, the less it's going to feel to you as if, well, hang on, this is just about what you're feeling. I don't know. I mean, I may be completely wrong about that, but it feels as if you're putting the person you're concerned about at the forefront, you've probably got a greater chance of having some of it land.
I think so. It's a bit like if you do get a professional involved, I think, and then not spring it as a surprise to the addict, because I think that causes issues. But certainly say, no, we've got this meeting coming up. Someone's going to come along and tell you how to deal with the issues you got here. There's some positive news. There's ways of dealing with it. I think if it's sensitively dealt with, then I think it would increase the success rate. But the primary risk, it seems, of interventions is the disruption of the relationship you have with the addict themselves. Because we know, again from my experience, I know some addicts have responded with a bit of anger, and it's particularly when the addict ends up feeling very belittled and feeling small, and it's very tough, especially if threats are involved. If you don't do this, then I'm leaving you.
That's what I mean.
Sort of threats.
It's exactly what I mean, because all of those it's for all of those conditions to be met.
Yeah,
you have to put the person with the problem at the forefront. As hard as it is, particularly if you are, thinking of an intervention, as hard as it is, it feels to me as if you've got to put your own needs aside.
Yeah.
Because if this intervention is done in order to try and help the person you care about, then that should be your only focus. And then that reduces the chance that they will feel belittled or threatened or, talked down to. Because you don't really need to do that if you're just concerned about someone, do you? You just say, I'm worried about your behaviour and I want to talk to you about it. I want to help if I can.
That's it. And that's why I think professionals need to be involved. I really do, so that they can structure the meeting. They've been used to these meetings, structure it properly, and to come up with some, not threats if you don't sort this out, this is going to happen. So these are the advantages, these are the benefits that you're going to see once you get involved. Once you go down there. So, but if threats are involved and then someone does lapse or someone doesn't take up your offer, what are you going to do? You've got to carry those threats through, haven't you? So you've either got to leave. So the person's going to say, right, that's it, I'm leaving. Especially if they've had a history of enabling the person. The relationship's going to change, isn't it? At that point, giving money to them or sheltering them, even. So it's going to change the relationship, whether it's hopefully for the better if they do take up the offer and get treatment.
The irony of threatening someone is that surely it's more likely to push them into their drug of choice, isn't it?
Oh, I would have thought so. Well, yeah, from my point of view, yes.
If you were told when you were still in the midst of your drinking that the people who you loved were going to abandon you because of your drinking, right, that's it, I'm done with you, I'm washing my hands of you, I don't ever want to talk to you again, you wouldn't really have any, it would remove one of your reasons for eventually getting sober, wouldn't it?
Absolutely right. Yeah. The goal has been taken away. The carrot and stick effect. I mean, it's tough because you're dealing with someone in the madness who is going to think and act irrationally anyway.
And there's even ways of communicating that, isn't there? Because you could say to someone, listen, I'm struggling to deal with this situation now. I'm going to take a break from it. I'm going to step back a bit. I'm here to help if you want to get some help, and I'll do everything I can to support you. But right now, to protect my own emotional and mental health, I'm just going to take a step back. I still love you. I still care about you, but I'm going to take a step back. It's very different from, if you don't get into rehab, I'm leaving you.
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
The upshot of it might be very similar, if not the same. But I think the way that it's positioned to someone who's already obviously struggling with their own vulnerabilities is probably pretty key.
I totally agree. It's the delivery of the message, the communication skills, which is why the first point on the list about how to make it an intervention more effective is to have a certified mental health professional with you or an interventionist. They exist.
Really?
Yeah, apparently. I think it's probably in America more than in England, but yes. But having said that, as I said, you'd be an officer down at the local hub that used to go and do that. So he would fall into that, into that area, that's for sure. But that would take that hopefully then would take some of the emotion out of it. The person that's the relative or friend that's doing the intervention can then be a little bit more emotionally attached, and the communication should be that much clearer.
Yeah, makes sense.
The second point was don't schedule an intervention at a time when the addict is likely to be high or stressed. So if you come into there completely blitzed, no point at all.
Yeah.
So again, it's quite difficult because you never know whereabouts in the cycle an addict is going to be, whether he's going to be at the very worst point or perhaps at a point where there's an element of lucidity about them.
Yeah, I suppose it's
tough.
Part of the risk is that if you see someone absolutely slaughtered, if it's been building up in you, that is probably a time when you are likely to make a ham-fisted intervention.
Yeah.
But that strikes me as very sensible advice. That's exactly the wrong time. It's true when in relationships people want to raise issues. Quite often in couples, you raise an issue in the midst of an argument. It's a terrible time to raise it.
Yeah,
if you're concerned about something that your partner's doing or not doing, the best time to bring it up is when everything's fine. Now, people don't do that because they think, I want to enjoy the peace. But it's faulty thinking, really. And I think it's the same with someone who's got a problem with addiction. You have to wait until everything seems calm and they're more likely to be receptive.
It is tricky. Do you remember the famous case of Gaza, Paul Gascoigne? Yep. I mean, a lot of his ex-teammates, Gary Lineker being one of them, chipped in and got him and dragged him off to America to a rehab. That didn't end well. No, there was no success attached to that at all.
No.
But it's the thought behind it. It was quite a loving thought, but delivered at the wrong time, and obviously it had no effect.
And also in the wrong way. There's a limit to what you. There's a limit to what you should take responsibility for doing.
Yeah.
If your intervention looks like sitting down with someone and saying, right, I've paid for you to go into rehab on Sunday. No, that's not right, is it?
No, it's not.
Because you're taking responsibility for something that has to be the responsibility of the other person. So I think it's fine to voice your concerns and signpost towards help, but taking those steps for someone, I can't see how that's ever going to end in anything other than disappointment.
Did you ever do you remember when the Jeremy Kyle show was on the TV? And they used to do exactly this. They used to have interventions where they would take people on the show and then spring upon them. So there's a car waiting outside to take them.
No, did they?
Yeah, they did. In fact, they did it with a famous footballer, Kenny Sampson.
Did they?
He was on the Jeremy Kyle show and they said, we've got a car waiting for you. And he said, no, I'm not going.
The late Kenny Sansom, you mean?
Yes, the late Kenny Sansom.
Yeah, which tells his own story, doesn't it?
It does tell its own story, but it's difficult to get figures as to what the success rate of the Jeremy Kyle show was in that area. But I'd be surprised if it was anywhere near that lower figure we talked about earlier on of 30%.
No, you can't do that to people. I mean, it's as I say, it's a complete overreach. You can't take responsibility because even if they get in the car and go and complete the 30 days or whatever it might be, there's not a solid foundation there.
No. Anyway, there's another point here, but don't yell or shame the addict. Yep. An intervention is not the place for guilt trips. The addict should not come away feeling like a bad or shameful person. Now, that's a very difficult act to pull off.
It is, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to build their sense of confidence in themselves that they can address this problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I expect a lot of interventions happen when the person involved, the object of the intervention, hasn't even recognised or acknowledged they've got a problem.
Yeah, quite. I mean,
I suppose there are different stages of intervention, aren't there? There's an intervention to help you try and, you need to try and be honest with yourself about what's going on here. And there's an intervention that is designed to get you help for a problem that you've already acknowledged. But there's a big distance between those two.
Yes, I agree. And which leads quite nicely on to the next point about making a clear distinction between the addict and his or her disease. An important point, but that's again, it's quite tricky if the person delivering that message has a bias towards one way or another. We know society generally considers it as a bit of an aberration rather than a disease. So you've got to be alongside the disease, the method or the disease module to understand that.
That's right. It's another example of you better put your own misgivings and prejudices aside, which is, always what you have to do if you're intervening on the basis of someone else's well-being.
Yes, I agree. It comes back to that same point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The next point was keep your words short and to the point. A long rambling rant can be overwhelming. Try writing down what you plan to say in advance and then keeping it to 5 minutes or less. Again, this is putting a structure which I agree with, but again, it's quite tricky because a 5-minute intervention, that's going to be quite tough to pull off to get all the messages across and allow the recipient of the intervention to really to take it on board and to rationalise it.
Yeah, it's true. It is right, though, because I think we often think that the more we say, the more impactful it is. But actually, the reverse is true. It's why in therapy we talk about how, silences are quite often where the magic happens. Because you can say something to someone and then say nothing. And when there's a silence, you're giving them space to think about it and to process it and to kind of get in touch with what's going on in them. And it's difficult, but it's very powerful. So I'm absolutely on board with that one. The less you can say, the more likely you are to be, hitting home.
Yeah, I'd agree. It does make sense. There's one here which was quite tricky. It said, be as specific as possible when itemizing the ways the addict's addiction has affected you. Which again goes against really what you've been saying there. You want to make it less about you, don't you, more about them?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? I think it's perfectly reasonable to tell someone the way in which you're experiencing their behaviour. I think that's fine. But the point I was making was you mustn't make the reason that you're bringing this up just about you.
Right, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, as going back to the previous example, I might be saying to you, I need to have a break from this. I need to get away from this for a bit. This is why. But I think it's important to kind of draw that distinction and create that balance between this is how I'm experiencing your behavior. This is why I'm taking the action that I'm going to take. I want you to think about what you can do rather than I can't take this anymore. You've got to change, because it's not likely to work, is it?
No, it's not. But I think the most important point, and it's the last point on the list, was about devising a specific treatment plan. So you've really got to go in there with some answers and say, this is, this is upsetting for everyone. This is what we can do to help. But again, having a professional on board is ideal. So you can talk about the alternatives and the resources that are available and saying, this is what we can do. Do a detox. We can get this sorted out. I have potential after rehab, etc. So it's not just leaving them high and dry, again, demonizing them and making them feel bad that they have this disease, but come along with some positive and say, these are potentials for you that's going to sort this out.
You also don't want someone to panic and think, crikey, I've got to do something, but I don't know what to do. And,
exactly.
Nobody seems to want to help me now because they're all pissed off with me.
That's right. And although it's delicate, if it is delivered in the correct manner, I'm sure it will increase the chances of an intervention being successful, which is the points I'm trying to make here.
So really what we're saying then is in terms of an intervention, it's useful if your intervention consists of let's both be clear about where we stand on what we're experiencing here. This is what I'm going to do. And these are the options you have.
Yes.
That's exactly kind of where we are, isn't it?
Yeah. That's right. I mean, to sum up what we've been saying here, I'm just going to read a very little short passage. An intervention is an act of last resort. So you need to ensure that you are prepared emotionally and otherwise to fundamentally change your relationship with the addict after the intervention is over. So, the relationship before or pre and post detox or rehab, it's going to be completely different. So the person that's doing the intervention has got to understand that as well.
There's an inference there, isn't there? There's an inference that your relationship with that person is then going to take a blow. That feels like the inference to me.
I suppose it does. But the way I interpreted that was really that, and I've seen it happen all the time. When someone goes into recovery, they change, and so you've got both people in the relationship have got to be aware that there's going to be changes of that, but they're always for the better.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's but you can't see it at the point of before recovery starts.
Yeah,
you've got to be aware that things are going to change.
Yeah, it just felt like a kind of cautionary beware this relationship's going to change, rather than a celebratory beware this relationship's going to change. Because
it is.
If you're at the point of intervention, you want that relationship to change, don't you?
Absolutely. But then again, I have seen if someone has gone off into recovery, not often via intervention, but gone off into recovery and changed, then the partner that's been left behind doesn't like it, especially if they've been using the addiction as a way to control that person. So there are going to be changes in the relationship, but mostly it's for the better, but you just got to be aware that things can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
But that's about it, really, mate. That's
very good.
Really where I wanted to take. There wasn't a great deal because I couldn't really find. If there's some more firm statistics to look at, then I'd be happier. But there just aren't, and
did anyone make
erratic?
Did anyone make an intervention with you?
I can't really remember, but I don't. I think it was my friends and family did rally around quite quickly when they knew there was an issue. But I don't think it was really intervention, other than it was medically driven in my case, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I had to go to have an operation.
Your biology made an intervention, didn't it?
It did.
Your body made an intervention.
It made the choice for me. If I didn't go and get myself sober, then I was going to my cancer was going to rip through me and kill me anyway. So it was
still an intervention, isn't it? It's an intervention of a type. You know, you were told, right, this is what's happening in your body.
Yeah. So
you got a choice.
Yeah.
You can either listen to your body and try and look after it, or you can not.
You can throw the towel in. Yeah.
Exactly. So, that's also an intervention, but it's a intervention on the basis of pure fact.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. There's no emotions at play there. It was one way or the other.
Yeah.
So that's
as Blondie once said.
And she put it much better than I had. Good.
Yeah.
Harry could, couldn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So really, just to move on to the gratitude list at this point.
I think it's your go first.
Well, mine was quite simple, really. Mine's video calls or FaceTiming.
Oh.
When you and I were growing up as kids, that was a thing of Thunderbirds, wasn't it? They were using sort of Skype, and you thought that would never happen. You're never going to be able to do that. That's just too complicated. Yeah. But the reason I like it, I'm grateful for it this week, is really because my oldest grandson, as you know, often FaceTimes me or often video.
Usually when we're recording, but often not. But a lot of the stuff that he wants to deliver to me is visual. He wants to show me what he's done, or his toys, or this sort of thing. So without a video, the concept of video calling, you couldn't do it. So I'm grateful for that. I think that's the technology that's moved on in that direction. I'm grateful for, because it helps me maintain my relationship with my grandson, even though he's geographically is a little way away. Yeah, and it also enables you to show him your oven and your vacuum cleaner, which he particularly likes, doesn't he?
Yeah, the only thing he did show me his poo down the toilet the other day, which not great, but it's he said, "Grandad, look, bang, there it was, poo."
Were you eating at the time?
Luckily not, no. But I was still grateful that he felt comfortable enough to show me.
Yeah, that's right. That does say something in itself. Yeah, very nice.
So how about yourself then, mate? What have you put on your list?
On my list this week, I've got, I'm feeling grateful for my car for taking me all the way to Scotland and bringing me back safely.
Oh, mate, I'll be very grateful for that. Yeah, that didn't break down.
Exactly, because I don't know whether it's an aging thing, but as I get older, I sort of do, that sort of thing does cross my mind.
It does. It does mine all the time. Yeah.
So it's like a 7-hour drive there, 7-hour drive back in 2 days.
Yeah, that's massive.
And when I was driving on Sunday, I don't know if you remember, but the weather was horrendous.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of aquaplaning all over the flipping place, driving through these puddles. And the other thing is, you kind of occasionally you pass people on the hard shoulder, or God forbid an accident. Yeah. And you think, oh, that could be me.
Yeah.
And so when you eventually arrive at your destination, whether it's going or coming back, I always think, oh, thank goodness for that. And I'm very grateful for my, for the reliability of my car getting me there and getting me home again.
I agree. I think it's an age thing as well. We get anxiety, breakdown anxiety.
Breakdown anxiety. Yeah, there we are.
Yeah, which no one likes. But yeah, you worry about it less when you're. The state of the cars you used to drive around in as a kid, you didn't really care about it. If it broke down, you'd sort it out then. But I think you're right.
And the environment, it worries you more when it's pitch dark,
Yeah.
pouring with rain, and you're in the middle of the Northumbrian National Park. You think if I break down now, I may never be seen again.
But I'm assuming it all worked out well with Daisy, and she's had her whatever she was having, her treatment.
She's back now with bits shaved off her fur, so she looks like you wouldn't take her to that same barber again next time.
Oh, okay, yeah, a bit erratic. Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. They always look quite poorly, don't they, dogs? They're a bit shaved away.
Exactly. Yeah. No, she's fine. Thanks.
Good. The next little feature is 100 skills that every person should master. What came up on the list
this week?
Well, sharpen a knife.
Oh,
which is, I don't know. I'm old enough to remember the knife man used to come around. The sharpening man used to turn up on his bike outside your house, and everyone used to take their knives out, and he had a big stone that used to turn and sharpen your knives up for, and your scissors.
Yeah. I'm guessing. I don't know if this is right, but I'm guessing you never sharpen your knives, even if you've got any kitchen knives.
No, I don't sharpen them. No.
Yeah. Well, it won't surprise you to hear that I'm totally on board with this life skill. I have a sharpening stone.
Right, okay.
And a sharpening steel.
You're constantly doing them, are you?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm constantly doing them, but when they get a bit dull, I get the stone out and it's got a slightly rougher side and a slightly smoother side, and you sharpen them up, and then you've got your steel to keep an edge on your knives. I'd be lost without that. There's nothing worse than a blunt knife. Well, there obviously are things worse than a blunt knife.
Yeah.
But of course, a blunt knife is a dangerous knife as well. As you don't do a lot of cooking, it probably doesn't bother you.
It doesn't bother me, but I do think I do need a stone, I think, or something to sharpen my knives. I think it would be worthwhile.
See if you could get a bloke coming around on his bicycle with a big stone like you did in the 1960s and 70s.
Well, that's exactly right. If that was still about, I would take my scissors out and my knives and let's sharpen them up.
You can get your knives sharpened. There are places that do it. Usually specialist knife shops. There's one in London called Kitchen Provisions. It's got a number of branches. If you take your knives along there, they'll sharpen them up for you, and they'll sell you a nice Japanese chef's knife for about 800 quid as well.
Yeah, it's just crazy business, isn't it? Crazy business. But I have noticed, now you mentioned that, I've noticed there's often a guy doing sharpening at the farmers markets.
There you go.
So, yeah. So
take your knives down there.
I will do. I think I'll take them at some point. Anyway, just a little music quiz then. You up for that?
Definitely.
You feeling sharp?
Feeling sharp. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Go on. Let's give it a go.
Okay, the first one is a number one in the UK. What year?
Yep.
Was Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper? You know, "Shallow" from When a Star Is Born.
I find these recent ones reasonably tricky because I find they're always further. They're longer ago than I thought they were. But the year that came into my head immediately, as soon as you said it, was 2018.
2 points to you, sir. Well done, you. Yes.
What a start!
Right on the money, mate. Right on the money. Yeah,
fantastic.
Have you watched the film When a Star Is Born?
I have. I didn't see it at the cinema, but I have seen it on the televisuals.
Yes, yeah, me too. I mean, there's been several remakes, but I particularly liked this one. I thought Bradley Cooper's depiction of an alcoholic was fantastic.
It rang true for you.
It did ring very true. Some of it was a bit of ooh. Yeah,
have you ever sung a duet with Lady Gaga?
No, she has asked on more than one occasion, but I haven't just had time.
I'd like to see you and her doing Blue Gazebo.
Yeah, listeners won't know much about that particular song, but it was one.
Or When the Board Is Tipped.
Yeah, well, there's songs we wrote as kids and performed very successfully.
Anyway.
Do you know the year? Now, what's the date today?
The 13th of December.
The 13th, right. It's Taylor Swift's birthday today.
Is it? Happy birthday, Taylor.
Yeah, if she's listening. Taylor, good on you, bless you. Do you know what year she was born?
I'm going to say 91.
Oh, look, you're 2 years out, mate. 89.
Oh,
You're so close to getting a point there.
Oh.
Which, a bit tougher, this one. Roy Orbison, he died at the age of 52. Do you know what year?
I'm going to say 1943.
He died at the age of 52 in 1988.
Oh, sorry. I was going for the year he was born. Oh.
I've got to take your first answer.
What year was he born?
Well, you work it back. If he died in 58, That'd been 35, wouldn't it?
Oh, so I wasn't that far out answering the question that you didn't ask.
No, well, exactly, yeah. No points for that, though.
Oh, no, okay. But I don't feel quite as foolish because I was answering a completely different question that you hadn't asked. Would that work on Mastermind if they asked you a question and you just answered a different one?
I'm sure that sure Bamba Gascoigne has slapped you down.
No, that was University Challenge.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Magnuson.
Yeah, but he died a long time ago.
Yeah.
What year did Magnus Magnusson die? Go on,
work that one out.
Go on, let's see how you like it. Bit your own medicine. What year did Magnus Magnusson die?
You're just looking it up?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
I think he died at the turn of the century, 2002. Something like that.
Right, let's see if I can laugh at you then.
I quite like people whose names is the same as their surname. Part of the first name is like Magnus Magnusson. I think it's a great...
Martin Martinson.
Exactly.
Great. Well, that is the so like a naming convention from the Nordic countries, isn't it? It's Magnus,
yes.
Son of Magnus.
Yes. Yeah.
Or that isn't that also the case with surnames that, if your surname is Farmer or Smith, it's because back in the past you come from farming stock or blacksmith.
Yeah. Or Smithery. Yeah.
That's right. So you come from Pankhursts, don't you?
I do, yeah. What happened
from a family of people who did pankirsting.
No, it's just where I expect it was someone who was cooking on the stove. They burnt something in the pan and they cursed about it. You know what I mean? It's all there, isn't it? I ought to get my ancestry DNA done, see where I've come from, probably.
You should do. So you said 2002, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, bad luck. It's 2007. But that's not too bad.
For a random person like that, no.
Yeah. I got confused by Roy Orbison, anyway.
You did, yeah. The big O. He sorted you out, didn't he? He put you in your place.
He did. What year did he die again?
88.
88, yeah.
And then
wasn't he one of the Travelling Willburys?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. Are they all dead now? Is Jeff Lynne still alive?
I think Jeff Lynne's still alive, isn't he?
He's the only one then, isn't he? Because wasn't it Jeff Lynne, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison,
Bob Dylan?
I want to say George Harrison. Was it George Harrison?
I think he was in there as well, wasn't he? Yeah.
So it's a Travelling Willbury now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's just on his own.
Yeah. Oh, well. All right,
mate.
Good stuff.
Good work. Thanks.
See you later.
Laters. Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandy-wellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.